Hello, friends. About 99% of friends who watch my videos are not subscribed, and I would be very happy if you did. Also, don't forget to press the like button and leave your comments. Your interaction makes the content reach everyone and helps the channel grow. Also, let me know in the comments from which country you are watching the video.
I still remember the night I thought I was going to die, and not in the usual truck flipped on black ice kind of way. I mean something else entirely. Something I can't explain without sounding like I've lost my damn mind. But I swear on everything I've got that this happened. And if you're hearing this right now, you better listen close, because the highways we drive ain't just roads, they're gateways, and some of them lead straight into hell. It all started on a long haul from Arizona to Colorado. Nothing unusual. Just another overnight run through some desert stretches that always make you feel like the world's been emptied out. Just you, your rig, and a whole lot of nothing. Was about 40 miles past a place called Gallup when my CB went static. Real loud, painful in the ears like metal grinding metal. I reached to turn it down, but the dial wouldn't budge. And then I started hearing voices not talking, more like whispering, layers of them, saying my name over and over. Not just Rick, but Richard Allen Hayes, my full name, like how your mom says it when you're in trouble. Now look, I've done thousands of hours on the road, hallucinations, tricks of light, sleep deprivation, I know all about. But this was different. The whispers turned into one voice, deep, low, like it came from under the earth, and it said, "Don't look behind you." And like a damn fool, I looked in my rearview mirror. That's when I saw it. There was something sitting in the sleeper cab. I got a real good look in the mirror, clear as daylight. It was shaped like a man, but way too tall, hunched over, knees up, its head touching the ceiling of the cab, and its skin was stretched so tight over its bones it looked like old plastic wrap. It didn't have eyes, just two deep holes, and its mouth was this wide slit that ran too far across its face. I slammed on the brakes so hard the whole rig shuddered. I jumped out of the cab with my flashlight, breathing like I just ran a mile, and swung open the sleeper door. Nothing, no one. But the smell, it hit me like a brick wall, rotting meat, engine grease, and something that smelled alive, but not human. I didn't sleep that night. I kept driving until I hit Colorado Springs and parked at a crowded truck stop just to be near people. I didn't tell anyone. Who'd believe a grown man saw a monster hitching a ride in his truck? But that was just the beginning. That was the night that opened the door. And once that door opens, it doesn't close easy. I figured maybe it was exhaustion, maybe a dream with my eyes open. But a few days later, something else happened that proved it wasn't in my head. I had a short overnight trip hauling parts from Amarillo to a warehouse near Tulsa. Around midnight, I pulled off for fuel at this lonely gas station just past Elk City, the kind of place that looks like it's been sitting there since the 70s, flickering lights, old rusted pumps, and not a soul in sight. I went inside to pay and grab a coffee, and the guy behind the counter didn't say a word, just looked at me. Not unfriendly, just ... blank. I nodded, told him I'd be quick, but he didn't respond. I walked to the back where the coffee machine was, and as I reached for a cup, I noticed something in the reflection of the freezer door beside me. That same figure I'd seen in the sleeper cab was standing just behind me, its head tilted like it was studying me. I spun around fast, but no one was there. My coffee cup clattered to the floor. The gas station guy was still at the counter, just staring. I walked up and asked him if he saw anyone come in after me. Still no response, just that same look. I paid in cash, got back in my rig, and peeled out of there with my heart pounding in my chest. About 10 minutes down the road, I checked my rearview mirror again and almost swerved off the road. There was something hanging from the back of my trailer. It looked like a man, but not fully formed, like he'd been half melted. His hands gripped the edge of the trailer door like he was climbing up. I could see his mouth moving like he was talking, but I couldn't hear a thing over the hum of the engine and the wind. I swerved again, trying to shake him loose, and finally slammed on the brakes. I jumped out with my flashlight, circled to the back, but nothing, just dust, gravel, and darkness. I didn't sleep again that night either. I kept rolling until sunrise, then pulled into a diner in Oklahoma, and sat there for hours just sipping coffee and staring at the parking lot. That's when another driver walked in, older guy, gray beard, heavy jacket, real quiet type. He sat near me, and after a few minutes he asked if I was the one hauling up from Amarillo. I nodded. He leaned in a little and said, "You see it yet?" I froze. "See what?" I asked. He just said, "The thing that follows. You'll know when it leaves its mark." Then he stood up and walked out without touching his food. I checked my rig after that, every inch. And on the inside of my trailer door, scratched deep into the metal, were the words, "Keep driving." I stared at those words for a long time, tracing the letters with my fingers, like maybe I could figure out how they got there. The scratches were deep, deliberate, like someone had used a blade or claws. I checked the latch, the hinges, everything. The door had been shut tight the whole ride. No way someone could have gotten in or out without me knowing. I tried to tell myself it was a prank, maybe another driver messing with me, but that didn't explain what I saw. That thing in my mirror, that thing hanging off my trailer like it belonged there. I didn't want to admit it, but something had attached itself to me out there on the road. Something I couldn't explain away with logic or caffeine or stress. I tried to forget it. I kept driving, trying to stick to daytime hauls when I could, picking routes through populated areas, but trucking doesn't always give you that choice. A few weeks later, I had a nighttime run from Boise to Reno, hauling industrial equipment down through Nevada. I just crossed into the desert stretch near Jackpot when I noticed headlights behind me. Nothing strange about that, except these lights were flickering like candles, and they were way too close. I radioed out on the CB. "Hey, buddy, you want to give me some space back there?" No answer. I looked again, and the lights were gone, vanished, like they'd never been there. A few minutes later, I saw something standing in the middle of the Pawang road ahead. At first, I thought it was an animal, maybe a deer or a cow, but as I got closer, I realized it was a person, a woman, wearing a long dress that fluttered even though there was no wind. I laid on the horn and hit the brakes, tires screaming. My rig came to a hard stop just feet from where she stood. I opened my door and stepped out, shouting, "Are you all right? You need help?" She didn't move, didn't speak, just turned and pointed toward the desert. Her arm moved slow, stiff like her bones didn't work right. I followed her gesture and looked out into the sand, but there was nothing. Just a flat stretch of moonlit nothingness. When I turned back to her, she was gone. No sound, no movement, no sign she'd ever been there. But the sand where she'd pointed looked disturbed, like something had been dragged out there recently. I got back in my truck and drove. I didn't stop again until I reached a well-lit lot in Reno. I slept with my cab light on and a crowbar in my lap. I knew by now this wasn't coincidence. These weren't random hallucinations or tricks of the road. Something was following me. Something was trying to show me things. Or worse, ... Trying to get inside ... After that run to Reno, I started noticing patterns. It wasn't every highway, and it wasn't every night, but there were stretches of road that felt wrong, like the air got heavy, like I was driving underwater. Places where the static would creep back onto the CB even if no one's transmitting, and the GPS would start spinning, showing me roads that didn't exist. I started marking them on a map, just a folded-up piece of paper I kept tucked in the dash. I'd draw a little red X over any spot that gave me that pressure in my chest, the feeling like I was being watched from just beyond the reach of the headlights. That map filled up faster than I expected. One road in particular kept popping. Up a stretch of Highway 50 out in Nevada. They call it the loneliest road in America, and I'll be damned if that name ain't earned. I had to haul a flatbed full of tractor parts out toward Ely, and I took that route again, thinking maybe the daylight would help. It didn't. Even with the sun high overhead, the sky looked gray. The clouds didn't move. No wind, no birds, no other cars. Just me, my truck, and a long ribbon of faded blacktop stretching through nowhere. I passed a rest area I didn't recognize run down, a single crumbling picnic table, one dead tree out front. Something told me to stop, maybe just a gut instinct, maybe something else. I parked and stepped out, stretched my legs, and that's when I heard it. Breathing. Not mine. It was coming from under the truck. Long, rattling inhales, like someone with broken lungs trying to stay alive. I dropped to one knee and looked underneath. At first, nothing. Just gravel and oil drips and rust. Then 2 eyes blinked back at me, pale like fish eyes, and a mouth opened wide, grinning with too many teeth. I didn't scream. I didn't even think. I just dove back into the cab, slammed the door, and floored it. I didn't care about speed limits or weight checks. I just drove until I hit the next town. When I finally stopped at a diner near Ely, I must have looked like hell. The waitress brought me coffee without asking and said, "Rough stretch?" I nodded. She leaned in and whispered, "That part of the road don't like company. You're lucky you didn't pick up a passenger." I stared at her, but she just walked off like it was a normal thing to say. That's when it hit me. Other people know. Other drivers. Locals. They've seen it too. But no one talks about it unless you've been touched by it. Unless it follows you. And once it's on you, it never really lets go. From that day on, I started noticing things that weren't just on the road, but in me. I'd catch glimpses of figures in my side mirrors, even in the daylight, tall, unmoving shapes that would vanish the second I turned to look. My dreams started getting darker, too. I'd see that woman from the road again, always standing in the distance, always pointing toward some unknown place I couldn't quite reach. But now there were others with her. A man with no face. A child with a twisted neck. They stood behind her like shadows with form, like memories that didn't belong to me. I started waking up soaked in sweat, even in my climate-controlled cab. I tried playing music louder, keeping the cab lights on, chewing coffee beans straight from the bag just to stay sharp. But nothing kept the feeling away, that feeling of being watched, studied, hunted. Then one night I had a run that I still can't talk about without shaking. I was heading south through New Mexico, taking a lesser-known route to avoid some construction on the main interstate. It was about 3 a.m. when I hit a fog so thick I couldn't see more than 5 feet ahead. That in itself wasn't too weird, but the fog wasn't showing up on my weather app. Temperature was off too. My dash said 92 outside, but it felt like winter inside the cab, breath visible cold. I slowed way down, hazard lights blinking, and that's when the radio crackled again. I hadn't touched it in weeks, hadn't heard a peep. Then it popped on by itself, and a voice came through, not a whisper this time, not static either. It was a child's voice, maybe 6 or 7 years old. It said, "You're almost here." I froze. My hand went for the power switch, but it wouldn't turn off. The child kept talking, calm, cheerful even. "He's been waiting for you. He rides in the back, remember?" My blood turned to ice. I reached for the lock switch on the door and double-checked every mirror. Nothing behind me, nothing on the road. But the fog outside had started to move. Not drift, not blow, it moved like it had a mind, like it was alive, creeping across the windshield in swirling, claw-like shapes. Then I felt the seat behind me compress, like someone was leaning forward. My heart slammed against my ribs. I didn't look. I didn't speak. I just stomped on the gas and roared through that fog until I saw a single street light glowing up ahead. I shot under it like it was a finish line. As soon as I crossed beneath it, the fog vanished. Just gone. Radio went dead. The seat behind me returned to normal. I kept driving, didn't stop until the sun came up. And when I finally parked, I climbed into the sleeper, shut every curtain tight, and curled up like a child. I didn't sleep. I just waited, listening, praying that whatever rode with me that night hadn't stayed. But I knew. Deep down, I knew. It was still there, just quiet, just watching. Waiting for the next road dot after that run through New Mexico, I started keeping a notebook. Not just a map with red X's anymore, but a real log of everything I saw, heard, smelled, or felt that didn't belong. I'd write down the dates, the times, the location, and what happened. At first, it felt stupid, like I was documenting a ghost story no one asked for. But after a while, it became something else. A warning, a record, proof for myself that I wasn't just losing my mind, because every new trip brought something darker, something stranger. The things I used to laugh off, bad dreams, weird static, creepy gas stations, they became routine, like I'd crossed some invisible line and was now driving in places meant for the dead. There was one night out near Cheyenne I'll never forget. I'd picked up a refrigerated load from a meat-packing plant, simple, direct, point A to B. Weather was fine. Roads were clear. But somewhere past midnight, my headlights picked up something lying across the road. Looked like an animal at first. Maybe a deer. I slowed down, bracing for the usual roadkill. maybe a damaged carcass. But as I got closer, I realized it was something else entirely. It was a man, naked, lying perfectly still on the center line, arms folded across his chest, like he was laid out for a funeral. I stopped the truck, threw on my hazards, and grabbed my flashlight. As I got out and approached, I noticed he wasn't breathing. No blood, no injuries, just pale as paper. His skin looked wrong, like wax, like a mannequin left out in the sun too long. I crouched down, reaching to check for a pulse, and then his eyes snapped open. Just like that. Two pale blue eyes staring up at me, unblinking. He didn't move, didn't scream, just stared. I jumped back, heart hammering, and stumbled toward the truck. I didn't even look behind me until I was back in the cab, door slammed. Shut. When I finally did, the road was empty. The body was gone. I looked all around with the flashlight, drove 100 yards back and forth. Nothing, not even a footprint. Just that feeling in the air, like something had slithered right past me, like something had tried to trick me into stepping just 1 inch closer. That's when I stopped pulling over for anything. Dead animals, broken down cars, flashing lights, I don't stop. Not anymore. Not since I realized some of the things out there, they aren't trying to hurt you right away. They want to lure you in. They want you to look too long to get too close. And once you do, they'll climb inside you, make a home in your memories, twist what you know is real. I used to think the worst thing about truck driving was the loneliness. But now I know the truth. The worst part is realizing you're not alone out there. Not ever. Something always rides with you. And sometimes it waits until you're at your most tired, your most vulnerable, to finally say hello. I should have turned back after that. I should have pulled over, called someone, taken a damn break. But that's the thing about this job, it doesn't let go easy. You get paid to keep rolling. And once you've been out on the road long enough, it becomes part of you. The hum of the tires, the rhythm of the white lines flying past, the loneliness, it digs in deep. And once you're marked by something out there, it's like the road itself won't let you leave. A week after the tunnel, I took a load of generators up to a site near the Canadian border. Remote place, barely a town nearby. I remember it was snowing hard, and my wipers were struggling to keep up with the ice buildup on the glass. I'd been on the road for hours with no sign of life, no gas stations, no headlights behind or ahead. Just me and the storm. Then, in the middle of all that white, I saw a light off to the side. Not a house, not a car. It looked like a lantern an old one, the kind with a flame inside, swaying in the wind. I slowed down, trying to get a better look, and saw what looked like a man standing by the tree line. He wore a wide-brimmed hat, something straight out of another century. He didn't move, didn't wave, didn't react at all. Just stood there with the lantern, watching. I rolled by real slow, trying to see his face, but the snow was too thick. Then I checked my mirrors. He was gone. Not walked away, gone, no. Footprints, no trace, just white snow and shadow. About an hour later, my engine temperature spiked. Alarms started blaring, lights flashing red across the dash. I pulled over onto a patch of ice and popped the hood. Everything looked fine, nothing leaking, nothing broken, but the temperature gauge kept rising, like the engine was overheating, from something inside. I was about to shut everything down when the truck jerked, not rolled, not vibrated. It jerked hard, like something hit it from underneath. I stumbled back, looked under the rig, and froze. There were hands reaching out of the snow, dozens of them, pale and thin, fingers clawing at the undercarriage. Some gripped the tires. Others scraped the oil pan. They didn't move like people. They moved like insects, twitchy and stiff. I jumped into the cab, slammed the door, and threw the truck into gear. The tires spun against the ice, but I didn't stop. I floored it until the chains bit through, and I broke free. For a mile or two, I could hear the scraping under the chassis, like nails against metal. When it finally stopped, the temp gauge dropped back to normal like nothing had happened. But when I pulled into the site the next morning, one of the workers looked at my trailer and asked, "You hit something? You've got handprints frozen into your rear bumper." I didn't answer. I just nodded and unloaded fast, not looking back once. Because I already knew those handprints weren't from anything alive. They were clinging, marking me, like they were saying, "We'll be waiting." I thought maybe if I just kept moving, didn't stop, didn't think, it would go away. That maybe whatever was following me needed me to pay attention, to grow stronger. But it doesn't work like that. These things, they don't need your permission. They wait until you're weakest, until the hum of the road makes your eyes heavy, and your thoughts scatter like dust in the mirror. One night I was hauling tankers through the back roads of Mississippi. It was humid, thick enough to chew the air, and the cicadas screamed from every tree like they were warning me to turn around. My delivery wasn't until morning, so I figured I'd pull off at a rest stop, catch a nap, just a short one. I parked beside a couple of other rigs, killed the engine, and cracked the window just enough for air. I set my alarm for an hour and crawled into the sleeper. I don't remember falling asleep. 1 second I was watching the trees sway in the moonlight. The next I was in a dream. At least I thought it was a dream. I was standing outside my truck, but everything looked washed out. The colors were gone. The sky wasn't black. It was just empty, like space with no stars. The other trucks were gone. The lot was silent. And in the center of it, there was a man kneeling on the pavement. He was rocking back and forth, whispering something too soft to understand. I wanted to speak to him, to ask where I was, but when I opened my mouth, no sound came out. That's when he looked up. His face wasn't right. His skin was pulled too tight across his skull, and his eyes were two hollow pits, deep and swirling like oil. When he smiled, it didn't stop at the corners, it just kept stretching. Then he pointed at my truck. I turned to look. My sleeper door was wide open, and something was crawling out. It was human-shaped, but wrong. Its limbs bent the wrong way. Its back arched like it was breaking with every movement. Its head tilted too far, like it was trying to look behind itself without turning, and it was crawling toward me. I tried to run, but my feet were stuck to the pavement. I screamed, but nothing came out. The thing reached me, raised a hand, and just before it touched my leg, I woke up. At least I think I did. I was still in the sleeper, drenched in sweat. My alarm hadn't gone off yet, but the window I had cracked open, it was now rolled all the way down, and on the inside of the glass in the condensation from my breath were 4 long streaks like fingers, dragged from top to bottom. Slowly, I didn't sleep again that night. I didn't even start the engine for 10 minutes. I just sat there staring into the side mirror, waiting to see anything move, but there was nothing. And that was somehow worse. After that Mississippi stop, I started questioning every little thing. Every creak in the trailer, every shadow that stretched a bit too far, every sound in the cab that didn't belong. I wasn't just being paranoid anymore. I was being hunted. Not by something I could see all the time, but by something that knew how to hide, how to slip in through cracks in reality. It knew when I was tired. It knew when I was alone. And most of all, it knew when I was scared. I got a new route out west, thinking maybe putting distance between myself and those back roads would help. They had me running a load of lumber from Oregon down into Northern California. Beautiful drive on paper mountains, tall trees, open sky. But the deeper I got into those woods, the quieter it became. The kind of quiet that presses in on your ears like sound itself is being pulled away. The CB was dead. No chatter, no truckers within range. Even my GPS blinked out halfway through the route and never came back. I kept rolling, hoping I'd hit a town soon, but the trees kept getting denser and the road narrower. Then I saw a sign, just a wooden board nailed to a tree. It read, "Welcome back." That might not sound strange to most people, but I'd never been on that road before. I slowed down, stared at the sign in the mirror until the trees swallowed it. A mile or so later, I passed another one, almost home. It was then I noticed something else. My headlights weren't lighting the road like they should. The beams were swallowed up only a few feet ahead, like I was driving through water instead of air. And the trees? They weren't quite right either. Too tall, too twisted, leaning in like they wanted to hear me breathe. I gripped the wheel tighter and pressed on. Then the smell hit me. Wet earth mixed with something metallic. Blood, maybe. The air grew thick, heavy. My truck slowed even though my foot stayed firm on the pedal. And up ahead the road curved into a tunnel of trees so tight it looked like a mouth waiting to swallow me whole. I didn't want to go through, but I didn't have a choice. No room to turn around, no shoulder to stop. So I went in. Inside it got darker. Not night dark, void dark. My headlights flickered. The trees were so close they scraped the sides of the trailer, and I swear I heard whispers riding along with the sound of the branches, voices calling my name, saying things like, "You came back," and "We've missed you." I started tapping the brakes, trying to slow without stopping completely, and just when I thought the road would never end, I burst out the other side, back into daylight. But it wasn't the same place I'd entered from. The sky was a deep red, like sunset, but it was only noon. The road was cracked, overgrown. The forest was silent again. And when I looked in the mirror, I saw movement in the back of my trailer, just a shadow, but it shifted. It was inside, and it had followed me out. I didn't stop. I couldn't. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it might explode. I just kept driving, hoping that somehow, if I put enough miles between me and that forest, I could shake whatever had slipped into the trailer. I refused to look back, not in the mirror, not out the side window. I could feel it, though, its weight. like the balance of the truck had changed, like something was shifting back there with every turn. The road eventually led to a small town, or what was left of one. Burnt-out buildings, rusted cars, no signs of life. I pulled over near what used to be a gas station, cracked the door, and just listened. No birds, no wind, just the ticking of the engine as it cooled. I grabbed my crowbar, stepped out, and made my way to the back of the trailer. My hands were trembling as I reached for the latch. I told myself if I opened it fast, whatever was in there wouldn't have time to react. I flung the door open. Empty. At least that's what it looked like. Nothing but the thick scent of damp wood and something else. Something rotted. I climbed in, slowly scanning every corner, checking behind the load straps, even under the tarp near the front. Still nothing. But as I turned to leave, I noticed something carved into the inside wall of the trailer. 4 words. "It's not over yet." That's when I heard the growl, low, wet, coming from beneath the trailer. I dropped down and looked. Underneath, there were footprints, bare, human-shaped, but the toes, too long, bent, and they led into the trees beyond the ruined gas station. I didn't chase. I wasn't that stupid. I slammed the trailer shut, locked it tight, and hit the road again. I drove until I hit Sacramento, straight through with no stops. When I finally checked into a motel for a few hours of rest, I noticed something strange in the mirror above the sink. My eyes, they didn't look like mine anymore. Still brown, still the same shape, but there was something behind them. Like someone else was looking through them from deep inside. I splashed water on my face, told myself it was just fatigue. But when I stepped back from the mirror, there was a handprint on the glass. Fresh, wet, like someone had touched it from the other side. And in the steam from the shower, words began to form slowly, letter by letter. "Don't stop driving." I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the edge of the bed, lights on, boots still laced, crowbar in hand. Something had followed me out of that forest, and now it was closer than ever. By the next morning, I had a choice to make: go home, get help, try to explain all this to someone, or keep going, keep moving like that message said. I should have gone home. I should have found a church, a priest, an exorcist, anyone. But deep down, I knew home wasn't safe anymore. Whatever this was, it wasn't bound to the road. It was bound to me. I hit the highway again before sunrise, this time hauling a refrigerated unit full of produce up to Spokane. The load was easy, the route familiar. But from the moment I pulled out of the lot, I felt off, like I'd stepped into a version of reality that was just slightly twisted, like everything was tilted a few degrees in the wrong direction. The radio didn't work, my phone kept rebooting itself, and the time on the dashboard kept resetting to 3:13 every few minutes. That number started showing up everywhere, miles on signs, gas prices, even the change I got back from a coffee. Stop. Always 3.13. By the time I hit the Idaho border, my stomach was in knots. That's when I saw the kid. Just a little boy, maybe 6 or 7, standing on the shoulder of the road in the middle of nowhere. No houses around, no towns for miles. Just this kid in a striped shirt and muddy jeans, waving at me like he was trying to hitch a ride. I slowed down, even though I told myself not to. Every instinct screamed at me to keep going. But I couldn't. I rolled to a stop beside him, lowered the window and said, "You all right, kid? Where's your folks?" He didn't answer, just stared at me with these big gray eyes that looked too old for his face. Then he smiled, and I swear to God it was the same smile I saw on that man in the dream, the one with the stretched face. Same grin, same dead eyes. I threw it into gear and hit the gas. As I pulled away, I looked in the side mirror. The boy was gone. Just vanished, like he'd never been there. But what chilled me to the bone was what I saw next. Sitting in the passenger seat, clear as day, was a figure. No face, no details, just the outline of someone sitting there, staring ahead. I jerked the wheel and nearly ran off the road. When I looked again, it was gone. I pulled over, got out, paced around the truck, trying to calm down. I didn't even realize I was crying until I felt the tears hit my hands. I wasn't afraid anymore. I was tired. Tired in a way that sleep wouldn't. Fix. I got back in, turned off the radio, and drove. I don't remember the rest of the route. Just flashes, trees, headlights, a deer that wasn't a deer, a voice humming a lullaby in the back of the sleeper. When I finally delivered that load, the guy receiving it said I looked like death. I didn't even argue. I knew I was starting to look the way I felt haunted. And something told me this wasn't even the worst of it. Not yet. I tried taking a few days off after that run, parked my rig at a lot outside Spokane, and checked into a cheap motel with buzzing lights and scratchy sheets, the kind of place where no one asks questions. I thought if I just gave myself a little space, maybe whatever had latched onto me would get bored, find someone else, move on. But it didn't. The first night I stayed there, I dreamed of roads. Not just one road, but all of them tangled together in an endless looping knot. They stretched through deserts, forests, mountains, even through places that didn't make sense. A road winding through the inside of a church, another one floating over a black ocean that moved without waves. I saw faces in the trees, bodies hanging from highway signs, and that boy again, always just out of reach, always smiling. I woke up to knocking, 3 slow knocks at the motel door. I didn't answer. I didn't even breathe. I just sat up in bed, staring at the door like it might crack open on its own. The knocks came again. Then silence. I waited another hour. Before I finally opened it, no one there. But someone had slipped a piece of paper under the door. Just a torn sheet, stained with grease and something darker. 4 words written in shaky letters. "You're already too late." I packed up and left. Couldn't even bring myself to go back to the truck for a full minute. When I did, I checked the cab, the sleeper. Under the chassis nothing, but the driver's seat was warm. Like someone had just been sitting there. I started her up and hit the road. No route planned, no load, just driving. I didn't care where. I figured maybe if I kept moving, I'd find the edge of this thing. Maybe it was tied to a location, a cursed town, an old highway, but deep down I knew better. I rolled through 3 states that night, stopping only for fuel and caffeine, eyes bloodshot, hands gripping the wheel like it was my lifeline. And somewhere past midnight, on an empty road in Utah, I saw something that nearly made me drive off the cliff. A sign. Wooden, hand-painted. "Welcome back." The same one from the forest route in Oregon. but I wasn't anywhere near that place. I passed it, heart pounding, and a few miles later I saw the next one. Almost home. Same writing, same placement. That's when the road started to look familiar, even though I'd never been here before. The same curves, the same trees. I realized then I wasn't just being haunted. I was being led, herded like cattle, driven down a path I couldn't escape. The road was folding in on itself, reshaping, drawing me back towards something it wanted me to see, something that had started all of this. And no matter where I went, it would find me again. Because the thing that had marked me, it didn't live on one road. It lived in all of them. By now I wasn't even pretending I could run from it. I wasn't sleeping, wasn't eating much, just driving through the endless night with my hands numb on the wheel, and my mind half in reality, half somewhere else. I'd see things in my mirrors that weren't reflections. I'd hear laughter under the rumble of my tires. And sometimes when I'd stop for fuel, I'd find handprints on the outside of the windshield, always facing in, like something had been trying to get a better look at me. It was somewhere outside of Colorado, cutting through a narrow pass with cliffs on one side and woods on the other, that I started seeing the signs again. But this time they weren't wooden. They were part of the road itself, painted onto the asphalt. Messages in bold white block letters like warning signs. First one said, "He doesn't sleep." A few miles later, another, "Don't look." BACK, I should have listened. But curiosity's a sickness when you're already broken. I looked in the mirror. For a fraction of a second, I saw something crawling along the back of my trailer. Not walking, crawling, long limbs bending the wrong way, the body pressed flat against the surface like it was clinging to the metal. Its face was a blur, like the reflection of a screen in water. It saw me, I know it did. I swerved and nearly went off the road. Caught myself just in time, but that was it. I was done trying to outrun this thing. I needed answers. I needed to know why it chose me, why it followed me. That night I pulled into a truck stop I'd passed before but never entered, tucked off a service road near an abandoned grain mill. It was barely lit, the bulbs over the pumps buzzing like flies. There was one other truck parked, but the cab was empty. Inside the convenience store, a single old man stood behind the counter. Didn't look up when I walked in. Didn't speak. I grabbed a coffee, stood there for a long minute, then said, "Something's been following me." The man finally looked up. His eyes were clouded, milky, like he'd seen too much and gone blind staring into it. He nodded slowly and said, "You've seen the Black Mile." I asked what that meant, and he just pointed behind me. I turned and saw a map on the wall, old and faded, full of pushpins and notes written in red ink. Some roads were circled. Others were crossed out completely. "The Black Mile," he said, "ain't on no map. It don't show up on GPS. You only find it when it finds you. One wrong turn, one moment of weakness, and it opens up to you. A road that loops through the worst parts of the world, of you. It don't end unless it wants to." I asked how to escape it. He smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was tired. You don't. You just keep driving. And pray it doesn't. Start speaking through you. Then he handed me a cassette tape. No label, no markings, just old black plastic. "Play this when you hit the next fog," he said. "And don't stop, no matter what you hear." I should have asked more questions. I should have burned that tape, but I took it, because something in his voice told me it wasn't a warning. It was mercy. I got back in my rig, that tape clutched in my hand like it was some kind of lifeline. It felt heavier than it should have, cold like metal left in snow. I didn't even have a tape deck in the cab, but something told me the truck would know what to do with it. That's the kind of logic you start living by when the road itself bends around you, when reality starts folding like an old map no one reads anymore. I drove for hours after leaving that truck stop, heading east without a clear destination, just trying to get away from the last sign, the last shadow, the last memory of what had followed me. Around 2:30 a.m., the fog came, thick and yellow-gray, like cigarette smoke, not natural mist. It rolled across the highway in waves, swallowing the stars, turning the trees to silhouettes that leaned too close. My headlights barely reached a dozen feet before the light was choked out. That's when the dash lit up on its own. Tape slot opened. I didn't even think I slid that cassette in, and the moment it clicked, everything changed. The cab went. Cold, real cold. Frost formed along the inside of the windshield, and my breath came out in quick, visible puffs. The engine groaned low, like something deep under the hood had woken up. The tape crackled, hissed, then a voice came through, not a person, not exactly. It sounded like wind, like whispers layered over static, like something alive trying to. Remember how to speak. You are not lost, it said. You were chosen. I gripped the wheel tighter, eyes on the road, even though I couldn't see where it was taking me anymore. The fog moved like it was breathing. Shapes appeared in it, people. Maybe, or memories wearing people's skin. I saw my father, long dead, standing at the shoulder with a wrench in his hand. I saw a woman I barely remembered from childhood, calling my name like she needed help. I saw that boy again, waving from the center line with that same stretched out smile. The voice on the tape kept speaking, changing, deepening. You are the vessel, it said. Your wheels carry more than freight. You carry echoes. You carry doors. You open them. And suddenly I understood. Every strange thing I'd seen, every creature, every sign, every tunnel that led to nowhere, they were fragments, glimpses. Each one was a crack in the world, and I'd been driving across them like spiderwebs across ice. I was the weight that made them break open. The tape hissed louder, and I screamed without realizing it. My hands went numb, my vision blurred. The rig shook like it was being pulled apart from the inside. The voice on the tape screamed with me, except it wasn't a scream of pain. It was joy. And then, just like that, it stopped. The fog vanished. Road stretched clear ahead. No frost, no shadows. Just an empty, silent stretch of highway under a pale sky. I looked at the tape deck. It had melted. Just a pool of black plastic in the console, and burned into the seat beside me, like someone had pressed it in with an iron, was a single handprint, still warm. From that moment on, I stopped wondering if I was cursed. I knew it. I knew the road had taken something from me, and in return it had given me something else, something hollow, something watching through my eyes, waiting for the next curve in the dark.